an understanding of the certification process, because it is pretty rigorous, as you'll hear, but certainly very rewarding. And ultimately, how it provides a structure for continual improvement benchmarking. So to make sure that you're not just coming in at one level, but that you're actually continually improving your score as a B Corp, which shows that you're really leveling up on your commitment to people and the planet. So with that said, I'd like to introduce everybody. First off, I'm Will from Green Circle Ideas. You may have seen a previous presentation, or you may just be joining this for the first time. But I'm here really to show how we can support the spa and wellness industry from a sustainability standpoint in terms of waste recovery. So that's what I do in my day-to-day life. And we're really happy to be bringing our model from the beauty industry into the spa and wellness segment. Now, next up, let's hear from Natasha.
Thanks, Will. I own Sloco Health and Wellness in San Luis Obispo, California. And I'm really proud to say that we were actually the first day spa in the world, at least as far as I could tell from all my searches, to become a certified B Corp. And my hope is that today, even if you don't want to become a B Corp, but you want to figure out a way to have a greater impact, that you at least go through and kind of learn about the process, because there's so many great tools from B Lab in order to really just improve the way that you do business so you can have a greater impact. So I'm happy to be here. We're happy to have you here. And Saied.
Hey, hi, thank you. Thank you, Will. My name is Saied Karamooz from Blue Beautifly. We manufacture skincare products in Northern California. And we first became B Corp certified in 2016. And we have had one recertification in 2019, and we're up for our second recertification. So I'm happy to answer and share any thoughts and or learnings and anything with you guys as you wish. So happy to be here. Thank you so much for including me.
Thanks, Saied. And now we have our guest to the GSN network, and it's Michelle Reid from B Lab.
Thanks, Will. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Reid. I work in community engagement and activation at B Lab US and Canada. Mainly, I help support the main B Corp network here in Canada, but work really closely with my American colleagues to really kind of support folks through the process. So really excited to be able to dig in and have you all learn more about the certification and really a movement of people using a business as force for good. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Michelle. So Michelle and I both live in Vancouver together. And I've been fortunate to actually attend some of the what they call BUILD or BLD, Business Leadership Development conferences put on by B Corp. And it's really terrific to see that this is a growing community. It doesn't just exist on paper or online, but it actually is really a living, breathing movement that has a number of different applications in the real world. So Green Circle became a B Corp in 2019. After many years of aspiring. We went through the process, which we'll share a little bit more about. But I think really to kind of peel it back, Michelle, why don't we start off just by talking about benefit corporations and what the difference is between a traditional shareholder model and a stakeholder model?
Yeah, so it's interesting when we're kind of looking at that concept. And so if we go back kind of all the way to 1970, that's really where kind of like the shareholder primacy kind of really was born. And it was really born as an idea, but it's been something that's really been thought of so commonplace that really the only purpose of business is to really create profit. And so really kind of looking at the stakeholder concept and really how B Corp or B Lab was born was really kind of looking at, you could actually have a good business and actually be good to your employees you could actually care about the environment. You could be really active in your community. And in fact, businesses really should have that responsibility to do so. And so really kind of looking at stakeholders in every decision that you're making as a business. And I think that's really kind of one of the main differences when we look kind of at, companies that really kind of think this way and companies that are still kind of along kind of looking at shareholders only. And I think, as we kind of see the evolution, I think more and more companies are going to be kind of pushed to kind of think this way. But it's really kind of looking at your business as a whole and really how your business actually affects those different stakeholders. And it does, even if you don't think it does. And so really, as, B Corps, we really think about that really intentionally. And, there's ways that we've done it, whether it's, making legal changes to our articles of incorporation, or it's just really kind of re-examining kind of our day-to-day practices. Yeah.
So you just touched on something there. A benefit corporation actually does exist under a different framework in business law. And can you explain sort of what that looks like?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting. So one of the tenets of becoming a B Corp, and we'll probably maybe go through that maybe a little bit later, but is really creating that legal change. So in Canada, you can amend your articles of incorporation, and that's actually perfectly legal to do so. We actually have language in the Business Act that actually attunes to that, but the B Corp language is a little bit stronger. One of the things that they found that happened in the US in particular, it was actually illegal to consider all stakeholders in your decisions. And so therefore they had to create kind of a whole different legislation in order for folks to kind of make that legal amendment. I think why that's important is really kind of protecting the mission of your business. I know, we be speaking to managers here, maybe some owners, and really your business is really your baby, and really kind of looking at how you protect all those values that you've baked into your business. And that's really where the mission lock really kind of comes into the whole B Corp picture.
So how did B Corp actually come about? How did this certification really become a thing that businesses wanted to start doing?
Yeah, I'll give you probably the short version of it. It's a longer story. But really looking at the owners, they used to have a business that was in the United States. It was called N1. I'm not sure if we have any basketball fans on here, but it was a great company. At one point in apparel, it was kind of second to Nike. So definitely they had built a successful business. They had built successful relationships with their suppliers. They treated their employees well. They were doing everything right that we'd really want corporations to do. One of the things that happens with business, you hope to potentially sell your business. And that opportunity came and they sold their business. And within 3 months, everything that was good was stripped out of their business. And that was really heartbreaking to them. And they really thought that there was a better way to do business. There was a better way to kind of create business and also kind of protect your business in the event that you potentially maybe wanted to sell or you wanted to succession plan. And so really they kind of came together. They created, one of the 10 amounts was really kind of going through and kind of seeing what this particular model would look like. And I think one of the main kind of tenements of the model, I think they went out to about 2,500 different organizations and kind of evaluated their practices and businesses and things like that. And so a lot of like the scoring and the development kind of really went into what's, kind of known as the B Impact Assessment. And I think one of the things that they also wanted to do was to make it very accessible. So not everyone is going to become a B Corp, and that's not really the expectation. Definitely hope that some folks kind of go down that journey, but really have the ability to kind of be able to use the B Impact Assessment. So that's actually a free assessment tool that you can use for your business. And I think that was something that was really important I think we have close to over 4,600 B Corps in the world right now, but there's over 150,000 users that use the B Impact Assessment to kind of manage their practices, to really look at what the standards really are, against other folks in their industry, or even against folks in the same size as well.
Very cool. And I think that this pulls me back to sort of why I thought that this conversation would be so impactful, is because as global citizens and consumers, we can all begin to look for B Corps, and sort of shift our purchasing habits. But I think also as businesses, even if we're not prepared yet to become B Corp certified, because it does require such a rigorous commitment, I think that there's still an opportunity to go through that B Impact Assessment and really look at, where can we begin to level up, and what would it take to become a certified B Corp. So with that said, I wanted to pull this up here, and maybe you can just kind of walk us through what these different impact areas are and sort of how this contributes to the overall scoring of a B Corp.
Yeah, for sure. So if we look at the assessment, so most assessments will have these 5 different categories. If you're an owner operator and you don't have employees, you wouldn't see the worker section, but this is pretty standard for most businesses. If we look at this, there's these areas, and we call them impact areas. And within these areas, there's a bunch of questions, as you can see. Most of the questions will be operational questions. So that's really kind of evaluating kind of the day-to-day activities of your organization. If we wanted some examples, we looked inside the governance section. It's really kind of looking a lot on your mission, looking a lot on your practices, looking whether you have, practices around ethics, also around transparency. And this is also where we had talked about the legal amendment. This is where the mission lock also lies in with this as well. The worker section, it's pretty straightforward, but a lot of it focused really on the financial security of a worker. So are you paying a living wage? What kind of benefits are you providing for your workers? Also just looking at how satisfied your workers are, and if you're engaging them to actually find out how satisfied they are. I love the community section. I think because I am a big supply chain nerd, I think you can influence supply chain from wherever you are. Community looks a lot at supply chain and supplier practices. Also looks at how you're kind of supporting your local community, as well as looking at kind of community and kind of donations around that as well. Environment is really looking all across scopes 1, 2, and 3. So really looking at your environment, if you have an environmental management system that kind of helps in this particular area, but really looking on your effects under those scopes. In customers, there's a few operational questions. A lot of the customers kind of questions inside this particular impact area, I kind of focus on impact business models. Impact business models are a little different than operation questions in that they really look at the purpose of your organization. So most folks usually kind of have identified that, but some are kind of still kind of going along that way to really figure out really what additional kind of benefit your organization can actually offer the community.
So once this whole series of questions gets answered, the assessment gets submitted, and then after a period of time, you get a follow-up, and you really understand at that point if you've qualified as a certified B Corp, correct?
For sure. So once you go through all these questions, part of that also is a disclosure questionnaire, which is not scored, but it just looks at if there's any practices or things that kind of might impact you becoming a B Corp. And the idea is to reach the 80-point bar. It's kind of a hard bar to reach, but that once you reach that 80-point bar, you would submit and you would go through a verification process where they look at documentation to kind of support these practices. And then hopefully after that, then you would become a B Corp.
And so we know that to become a B Corp, you have to reach that 80 points. Where does a typical corporation stand?
Yeah, that's a good question. A typical corporation would stand about 50. For those folks that had some kind of environment and social governance practices, they might reach kind of around the 65, 70. So to become a B Corp, it's that 80-point bar. And that's really when they went out and kind of surveyed those companies and taking an assessment. That's what they kind of found. And that's why that point system is there.
And what's the highest B Corp score you've seen, Michelle?
Gosh, I think there is like a small solar energy plant out of the USA that's around the 175-ish. I could speak here for the Canadian market. The highest is Assiniboine Credit Union, which is at a 166. So yeah, so you typically would have a very high operational score, and you would maybe have 1 or 2 additional kind of impact business models to kind of reach that kind of level. Yeah.
Very cool. Now I know that there is a question if we could share the impact assessment link. So obviously we'll get that in the chat box. But I just wanted to circle back to something you touched on earlier, which was looking at your sector. So you said, oftentimes organizations aren't necessarily in a place to certify at 80 plus, but they could actually still go through the impact assessment, and they could look at where they stand relative to their business sector. Maybe you can speak a little bit more to that and how this breaks down the different scores.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely we kind of talked about the impact assessment being a free tool. So anyone's welcome to kind of sign on, create your own assessment and answer the questions. What's really great within the assessment is there is this benchmarking tool. And so it's really interesting to be able to see there is, I think, five different sectors that you can kind of choose from when you're kind of completing the assessment. But it's interesting to be able to see how you kind of stack up against other folks that are in your same kind of employee range, your same sector range, also from the same country. So definitely this is an added feature that folks really like in order to be able to kind of compare. And I think it's a good bar to be able to kind of look at, especially in some areas. I know in Canada we get a little bit of boost because of our health system, but I think companies can kind of look at this and kind of see kind of where they're kind of falling a bit behind other organizations as well.
Very good. Definitely a valuable tool. Thanks, Michelle.
Yes.
So now I thought we could open this up and begin a conversation around what the various experiences have been within the GSN of our community members actually going through the certification process. So with that said, I'll welcome Natasha and Saied into the conversation. And so, Saied, what was it that made Blue Beautifly actually want to become a B Corp back in 2016?
We are actually a fairly new company. So we created the very first start, if you will, was in 2011 when we created the company. But then the first few years were just devoted to formulations and research and all those kinds of things. So that took, a good 3 to 4 years. And then the next was to frankly build the business, meaning, create the facility and the distribution channels and things like that. But establishing ourselves as a trusted, supplier was important to us, and as was, it's operating a sustainable and responsible business. So we didn't want to just be the ones, pounding our chest and saying, we're sustainable, we're, responsible, this and that. We really wanted to ensure that the consumers and our buyers, whoever makes a decision, trust that. So that's when we, got the certifications such as USDA organic, the vegan, and then B Corp. So it was a fundamental corporate value for us to have certifications that are from a trusted source. So it wasn't an afterthought, if you will. Every bit as important to us for us to do those things. It was to have a trusted third party validate that we are doing those things. So that was frankly the impetus for us to get the B Corp certification. Because we were kind of skeptical ourselves, so to speak, when we go shopping. We look at the ingredients list, we look at the USDA organic seal, we look at B Corp, or we did at least, or still do. So anyway, those are the kinds of things that we really built in the fabric of our business. Now, listening to Michelle, frankly, what we're beginning to see now, it's a consumer demand into not just the products that they buy, but also how the business operates and what they do. Now, granted, our audience is self-selected, meaning they gravitate to our brand because of some of these things. But I think by and large, we're just seeing the growth of demand for things that the B Corp companies represent and embody. So in a way, we went to it, and in a way, it is coming to us. So not sure if I'm answering your question directly, but that was kind of why we wanted to be a B Corp certified company.
I definitely agree with you, Saied, that there's going to be more of a demand for that. And that's kind of part of the reason that we decided to become certified as well. The first half of my life, talking about caring about the environment or alternative health was not a thing. It was just not anything that I was ever really introduced to until I went to massage school about 12 years ago. And I started learning about health in a different way, which led me to discover the importance of caring for our planet too. And really my passion kept on going deeper and deeper and looking at business as how can I use business as a force for good, and stumbled across B Corp. And it's just such an amazing tool to better understand how we can have that greater impact, and also be able to simply communicate what we stand for as a business to potential guests. Because when someone comes in for a massage, for example, you're not really going to talk to them about, I don't know, not using harsh chemicals to sanitize things, or your laundry detergent, or the weird, toilet sink combination that you have in your bathroom to help save water. And so it's just a really nice way that when someone walks in the door, they see that certified B Corp with the tag that's it's all about using business as a force for good. And they know that their money is going towards a business that actually cares about the people and the planet.
Yeah, very well said. I think similarly, Green Circles, we became B Corp certified because we knew that it was a way to differentiate against other groups, and really to show that there was a commitment behind what we say we do. So in the same way that you don't necessarily want to have to go through your water saving features, what the B Corp certification does is it really says somebody's gone through all of these data points and has legitimized the work that we're doing, so that you don't have to. You see this seal and as a consumer that you're supporting a business that's doing its part for people in the planet. And that was so huge for us because in the resource conservation sector, I think there's so much ambiguity. There's, people tell me all the time, I see my recycling get picked up and it gets dumped into the same, dumpster as all my trash. And it makes me really wonder what's actually happening with it. And so when you have this kind of designation, you can show really that you've been through a rigorous third-party audit that has established the chain of custody from where, in our case, the spa business is involved all the way through to the end of life of these materials. And by doing that, what we're saying is you don't have to do the work. You don't have to exhaust yourself digging into all the data, because our B Corp certification has allowed us to do that and just present the final details to you. So with that, let's maybe talk a little bit about our scores. So Natasha, I know you're in the midst of recertifying, but tell me about how you achieved your initial score back in 2019 and sort of what that process looked like for you.
Yeah, so we started the assessment, I think in fall of 2018. It took some time to kind of fill that out. It's funny because I told our team like kind of how much time and energy it takes to like just get through the assessment and make sure the documentation is in place, and also you know, take the suggestions that are in the assessment and actually create policies and implement them. It takes a lot of time. So our score, we honestly just barely scrape by. We have a score of 81.8 right now from our certification in 2019. And I feel like a lot of our focus at that point was on the environment, whereas with this recertification, we're really trying to focus on doing more for our employees.
And Saied, tell me about your B Corp score and your journey to get there.
We did it initially in 2016, and a little funny story on that is at 2016 we were such a young company. Our employees hadn't been with us for very long because we never had employees before that. So what we had to do was actually hold our application for a while until our employees are with us longer, and we get the points for that in order to clear the 80-point mark. So it was kind of funny, you know, you get points for whether your employee, like average employee has been with you 6 months or a year or 2 years, right? So the longer that is, the higher the points that you get, which is good. It shows that, you know, you're taking care of your employees and you don't have high turnover and things like that. So the funny story is that, yeah, we were so close to that 80 mark, except we just needed like, I don't know, 1 point or half a point or something like that. And to solve it, we literally just waited to submit our final application, and that solved the problem. But, you know, that second recertification was much easier, and it was fun. This year we're up for it again, and you know, we've done some pretty significant improvements in the last since the last one. One is that we now offer bottle buyback. So basically, since we use glass bottles, we can literally reuse them. So not recycle. That is, you know, I don't want to even get to that. But so that has had a pretty dramatic impact on our, you know, fresh bottle consumption. So that, I don't know how that's going to be factored. I don't know if there's provisions for, you know, offsetting the greenhouse gas that goes into manufacturing and shipping and this and that. We'll find out. And the second thing is we have our outgoing packages. We have reduced the packaging on that pretty significantly, whereby the volume and the weight of each outgoing package has dropped pretty dramatically. So we'll see how those impact our upcoming recertification, and maybe some other small things that might help. So our goal is to exceed that 100 score that we have currently. We'll see.
I believe you're sitting at 100.8, if I'm not mistaken. So Blue Beautifly actually wins the award here on today's call for the highest score. Interestingly, so as Saied mentioned, they've already been through one recertification round. The recertification happens every 3 years, and Green Circle, Sloco, and Blue Beautifly are all actually up for recertification in 2022. So Green Circle came in at a score of 81.9, very similar to Sloco. However, in the last year of putting all of our data together to submit, we're currently on track for a score of, I believe, 99.4. So that's really exciting for us. And I think that was because, you know, really by going through the process the first time, you really learn what's available to you in areas where you can double down. And so certainly community, our workers, and governance have been three areas where we've really spent a lot of time to ensure that we're leveling up on our commitments. And one of the areas that I wanted to go back to with you, Michelle, is the Sustainable Development Goals. Because for Green Circle, I spoke about this on our last call, for Green Circle, the Sustainable Development Goals and the relationship between B Corp certification and that commitment to the SDGs really was a way to kind of gauge where we were on the track and sort of how it created kind of a North Star that we could continue to aspire to making progress on. So I'm wondering if you could maybe just give a quick overview for the audience here on what your experience of the Sustainable Development Goals is, and sort of where B Corps like to interact with that set of goals.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say definitely with the Sustainable Development Goals, a lot of that really will play into really the purpose of the organization. So as folks really kind of examine kind of those goals and really want to understand what area they want to affect, definitely I think as a B Corp community, we've done very well in the social goals, and that's where a lot of folks really kind of lie. But there definitely is a lot of space to kind of make some movement on some of those environmental goals as well. I think that where that plays into kind of the B impact assessment is really those impact business models. And so those are really kind of like intentionally designed systems that are really measured and have like a lot of supporting documentation and research kind of behind them. And so that's really where those kind of play. But for folks that are kind of really interested in the Sustainable Development Goals and kind of digging like a little bit deeper, one of the things with the B Impact Assessment is we also have the SDG Action Manager within the same form. And so it actually once you fill out the B Impact Assessment, it'll port those answers over. And there'll also be some additional ones. So what I usually encourage folks to just not get so inundated is really to maybe to focus on one sustainable kind of development goal and really kind of explore that really, really deeply. But I think, you know, definitely the Sustainable Development Goals are very important, and they're very much integrated into that kind of impact business model and that purpose section of the assessment.
So just a reminder for anybody who kind of needs a quick breakdown, the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, are 17 goals created by the United Nations for individuals, businesses, and governments to really align around global progress. So environmental progress, social progress, governance, of course. And it's really designed around the Paris Agreement. And so keeping our global temperature from rising, while also ensuring that we can continue to build as a planet in a way that will allow us to sustain future generations. So this is really kind of the North Star, or the guidebook, that will allow us to create a future that allows us to inhabit the planet. And this is something that businesses increasingly are starting to govern themselves according to, or look at how they're contributing to these Sustainable Development Goals. So I think, and thanks, Megan, for sharing that. So what Michelle just shared around the alignment between B Corp and the SDGs, I think is so helpful, because it really allows you to see, to draw a line of sight between the work that's being done on a global level and the work that's being done within your actual business as well. So I wanted to ask Natasha, what's been your single greatest challenge in becoming a certified B Corp?
I think in looking at the assessment, I was going back and seeing like where a lot of the points kind of lay, like what is considered of having a great impact. And the smallest difference between us and other companies, like you were showing earlier, was actually in workers. But it's funny because we're not in a position right now to offer health insurance. And there's a lot of questions about about health insurance, like the level of coverage and what's provided to employees. And there's like 10 points in there basically that are just geared towards health insurance. And so as a smaller business, especially over the last 2 years, it's just not something that has been financially feasible for us. And so we've really just been trying to focus in other ways and really just, instead of being kind of disappointed that in this recertification process that we didn't make as much of an improvement as we wanted to, just looking forward to what 2025, like what our goals are for 2025. And, you know, part of looking forward is like, we really want to become employee owned. Like we've been getting the team members more involved in the process, because before it was kind of me just going through the assessment, creating the policies, putting them in place. And now we've really just been trying to get a little bit more employee engagement. And so it's a really cool thing to see that instead of, I'm sure other business owners can relate to this, or other people in general, like you feel like you have to take things on yourself rather than like getting everyone involved. And I think that's one of the things that's been really cool about becoming and going through this process is really just reflecting on leadership too, because this is a growth opportunity and a learning opportunity for the team as well. So I would say that even though there's a lot of things that you can do that are not financially challenging, there are some things that for us being able to do like a living wage for a family, like in our area for every employee, it's like over $30 an hour. And that's just not feasible for us. So I'm looking forward to the day that we can make that happen. But I would say that those kinds of things have been the biggest struggle for us in becoming certified.
Yeah, and it's interesting how it is such a, you know, some of these challenges are very local, both regionally and also within your organization. So some of the groups tuning in may be able to say, oh, health insurance isn't an issue within our business because we've already figured that out. And similarly, the living wage thing is such a regional challenge because minimum wage, you know, minimum wage can differ so much from one region to the next, and living wage is actually significantly higher than that. Saied, how about for you? What's been the greatest challenge? And maybe I should also ask, what's been the greatest success that you've seen as a result of your B Corp certification?
To be frank, you know, 2019 seems like a lifetime ago, so I don't remember much about that. But one of the, I mean, kind of the interesting encounter, if you will, is people say, "Oh, you're B Corp certified, this and that." How can you afford that? I mean, that's to me is like the, you know, a very interesting, misguided, if you will, view of being sustainable and profitable at the same time. You know, frankly, many of these things that we do are not cost negative, right? They don't increase the cost. Some things do, but for example, I mean, even in hospitality industry, I mean, over the years, we've seen how the daily room service is now optional, right? If you want it, you say yes. If not, you know, and a lot of times that's promoted as a green service, or like, you know, your towels being replaced every day, right? But really it's a cost-cutting measure. Likewise with, you know, receiving your bank statements electronically versus paper, right? It's a cost-cutting measure, but it's sold as a green initiative, right? So these things need not be necessarily incongruent. That's one thing. The second thing is that consumers, knowingly or unknowingly, will pay the extra dollar, right? So in other words, you know, for example, just literally last week, someone sent us an email saying, "Oh, you know, thank you so much for giving a portion of your profits to charities." Well, we didn't, she did. We don't print money, so it's baked into our pricing. So they did. So in other words, that person actually paid a little bit more for the product that she got. And she also thanked us for charging her more to give a portion of it. I mean, it's like, so it doesn't, to me, to us, generally speaking, you know, the challenge almost is like challenging our, not our consumers or, you know, ourselves, but, you know, our industry and our community to embrace and explore ideas on how to run your business in a more efficient, more responsible, more thoughtful way, and question, frankly, every aspect. And that's how we arrive at a lot of these things. Give you another example. You know, we all of these labels that we print and put on the bottles and, you know, packaging and all that, they have a waste of wax paper on the back. If you kind of think about how this, you know, that's like comes on a roll and then the label comes off and then you have this wax paper. Well, we used to throw that in recycling. Now we just use it as packing material for boxes that go to our, you know, wholesale accounts. So it gets another use. It reduces the waste, right? And it's, then they can recycle it, and in the process, you know, we have reduced unnecessary waste in the process. So to answer the challenge question, I think that it's been not so much of kind of trying to overcome obstacles, but more to just challenge ourselves and our industry and our, you know, community. In the benefit side, I mean, there's absolute upside. I mean, we constantly see, for example, people who see our B Corp certification and want us to present at their event, or you know, a person like I went to UC Berkeley, I was invited to speak at one of their classes. Employees, people who want to work for B Corp certified companies will reach out to us from around the country, and some consumers who, again, look at those things and you know, I'm not suggesting that 100% is attributed to B Corp certification. They see our practices as published on our website, you know, what we do, and the B Corp is a kind of an element of it that validates what we're claiming. So, and maybe a long answer to your question, but the detailed one.
I think that's a terrific answer, and I would agree with what you said. I think you know, B Corp as a seal of certification is becoming more widely received by consumers, or rather recognized by consumers. And I think that that's just increasing. You know, Michelle mentioned that there are currently 4,000 B Corp certified organizations out there, but that's been growing steadily over the last decade. And so I think as these organizations continue to show what they're doing for people on the planet, it's only going to become more globally recognized by consumers. And I think internally, you and Natasha both pointed to something where, you know, B Corp, the B Corp exercise becomes an opportunity to really engage your staff. And then the certification, once received, is a way to again, sort of find and retain top talent, because this is a level of certification that distinguishes you against other businesses. And certainly that's the experience that we've had as well. So we're going to do a quick breakout group, and just for about 8 minutes. And the question that we wanted to ask everybody here is, what aspect of your organization is having the greatest impact on the community, your employees, or the environment? So I'll put that again into the chat box so that everybody can see it. But what aspect of your business is having the greatest impact on community, your employees, or the environment? So let's all just take a few minutes to discuss that, and then we'll come back and share what our key takeaways are.
recorded.
Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope that time away in the breakout group was productive for you all. I had a great conversation with the gentleman from Osmosis, and we were talking about regeneration and all of the great things that their organization is doing at the community level, as well as, you know, in terms of the environment. So I guess I want to ask as a follow-up question, what did you hear, or what was discussed inside that breakout group that you could use when it comes to actually taking part in the B Corp impact assessment? Does anybody want to share?
Well, I will. So I was fortunate to be in the room with Michelle and Saied, and I think that what we really spoke about was people really feeling like getting started was harder than actually completing the process, and that the hardest part of completing the process was doing the measurements of the activities that you had to monitor during the time period that you allotted for the assessment. And we were kind of trying to get to the bottom of, you know, what is it that holds people back from that, right? Like, what's the intimidation factor and why does that exist? Yeah, it was a great conversation.
And I know, Michelle, you and I have talked about this offline, but the fact that, you know, every organization needs to be doing environmental assessment, whether or not it's in the form of, you know, your B Corp assessment. This is really becoming business critical at this point. So some of those inputs may already be available for your B Corp assessment, but regardless, this is something that you should be measuring and monitoring. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I know we're just about at time here. I also just wanted to make sure that if anybody had any general questions around B Corp certification or the impact assessment, that we have Michelle here as a resource who we can kind of pose these questions to. So please feel free to come off mute if you have any questions and pose them now.
And I'd like to extend the same invitation. If anybody has any questions, follow up after this call, feel free to contact me directly.
Thanks, Saied.
Awesome. Thanks, Saied. I know we have at least one person who's sitting in a quiet area inside the spa who can't come off mute. So why don't we just leave it there? And as you heard, we have some fantastic resources here if you do have questions. So Michelle, just to kind of send things home, I want to make sure that everybody knows where they can really go from here if they want to take the next steps as consumers or as businesses to really look at B Corp certification.
Yeah, I would say, you know, that my one call to action would be go on to the B Impact Assessment, open an account. Start with one pillar that you're really excited about or that you really think that you'll do well, whether it's the environment or the community. Start with that and just start digging into those questions. I think you'll just be really surprised in what you find, and I think it'll just be a really valuable exercise. So that would be my request. And when you see the symbol, buy B Corp. You probably can look in your pantry and you'll find a lot more B Corp products than you probably will expect. So.
Excellent. That's a great way to start to really just kind of ease into the exercise so it doesn't feel so daunting. And I think we've said it a few times, but just to reiterate, doing the assessment does not mean that you have to submit. It doesn't mean that you are financially committed. There's a free and easy way to begin your journey through the B Impact Assessment and to really see where you stack up against other organizations in your country, in your sector. So I would encourage everybody to take a moment to just do that and see where it takes you. So a huge thank you to you, Michelle from B Lab, for spending the time with us today, to Natasha and Saied from the board, and to everybody in the GSN community for really engaging in this important conversation about becoming a B Corp. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out through the available channels. And we hope that this provided some good educational value for you.
Thank you.
Thank
Will.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I think it's very useful for me. I think I would like to see how I stack up as a company.
Thank you, Vivian. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, thank you, Joanna.
Very glad you're here. Thank you. All right. Well, everyone,
everybody.
thanks to Will and Michelle and Saied and Natasha for being here and sharing your experiences. And we'll see you on April 11th for our next Green Circles Ideas webinar. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.